I'm Jay Jeffries, and this is my final project presentation for Data 608. My topic is excess all-cause deaths in the United States. Dr. Michael Levitt is a professor of biophysics and a Nobel laureate, and he proposed this statistic as a proxy for indicating the return to normalcy after the coronavirus pandemic. The idea is that we are mortal, people die all the time, and we know about how many deaths to expect in a given time period. And we can observe if there are more deaths than usual. Certainly, there have been more deaths than usual in the year 2020, but how much more? And attributed to what? We collect very good vital statistics data, and even if deaths are not correctly attributed to COVID-19, we can see what the trend is for the year. This data is available from the CDC, and I'm going to skip to my second figure. This figure, observed deaths by week, is reproduced from the CDC website. And you can see that, well, here's the trend line of what the threshold would be for excess deaths. And in April, we exceeded that threshold. I've been looking at this chart every week since the beginning of the pandemic. The idea is that when you get back down here, when you get below that trend line, well, we're suffering no more burden of mortality than before the pandemic. This looks like we aren't suffering excess deaths in the most recent period, but that is an anomaly due to data that just hasn't been collected yet. There's a bit of latency in when we get the vital statistics data. Now, what I found with this is that I wanted to compare regions. And all right, if I look at South Dakota, okay, they're having a hard time right now. If I go to my home state, okay, we have a little blip coming back, but our pain point was back here in April and May. I wanted to compare regions, and so this is why I added on to the CDC data by constructing a choropleth. Now, for a given time period, in this case, I'm taking not the most recent week because the data are incomplete, but 3 weeks earlier from the latest reported. Now I can get a slice of that timeline and compare regions, and we can see that South Dakota is where it's hottest as of early November. I can look at different weeks, and I think what would be interesting to consider is if I'm looking at New York, well, our peak was April 11th. Well, if I look at April 11th now, I need to go back this way. All right. Well, we in New York were the hardest hit at that time. And that's evident from the choropleth. Michigan was getting something. And if I wanted to come back and compare, look at the timeline for Michigan, I can do that too. All right, so Michigan, well, its peak seemed to coincide with ours, but it just wasn't as pronounced. And Michigan is having a second wave now. The figure at the bottom is the proportion of excess deaths by week. And what I'm doing here is normalizing this trend line so that I can get a proportion representing something more absolute about what the burden of mortality is. I'm going to say a little bit about how I built this. I'm making use of the Socrata API, and I'm able to fetch data from the CDC with that API to render these plots uh, very rapidly and with current data. I'd like to show you a little bit of what I'm doing behind the scenes. This file, app.py, is the Dash application. And it has my text that I wrote for the page and the app, okay, and then callbacks. But all the uh, guts, in fact, is in a code behind. I factored it into my own module, which I import at the top of the app. Uh, there's my module from Data 608 Final Import Star. And what this does for me is give me a nice library of code that I can reuse. I'm interested in geographic information systems, and I needed a lookup table to decode uh, the state names, well, encode the state names into their abbreviations, because my uh, graphing application of choice, Plotly, needs to see state codes for rendering the choropleth. Well, this will become part of my GIS library. I'll save that into a module that I can use for other GIS projects. And I like this outline feature in Spyder. Here's all my Socrata functions, and here I'm channeling Alan Downey, who likes to organize stuff this way. And so now I have a whole toolkit of Socrata functions that I can reuse for other projects. Here's one that'll be familiar. This is Charlie's suggestion about how to encode spaces in our URLs. So that's a nice little function that I can apply, a method that I can apply to any URLs that I need. I adopt the convention of using the verb fetch for all of my interaction with the Socrata API. And so this turns out to be a nice way for encapsulating my queries for data retrieval. Another nice benefit of this is that I can then bundle up my fetches to be strategic about how frequently I wish to transport data across the network. Here are my Plotly functions. These produce the graphs. And what I want to show you is that for the map data, I need to refresh the data every time. So I put the URL in the function for drawing the map. And each time I refresh that map, it fetches data again. However, the two figures below, they use the same data. So this is where I can be strategic and say, okay, I'm going to pass the data to these plots and only make one call to the API. And that happens in the callback function. Here's the app, there's the callback. So when I'm updating the page, well, I'm going to go out and fetch the data and then render the two figures using that data I fetched. I'm a SQL guy, so I'm always into how I can optimize my data retrieval for the least least number of hits and the least possible data transported. That's it for my presentation. I have a couple of things that I still would like to add. This functions the way I want, but I would like to produce tabs to get some of this printed matter out of immediate sight so it doesn't clutter the visual presentation. And I would also like to do uh, uh, some coding for filtering so that I can click the state of Texas and then refresh these lower graphs for Texas without having to select Texas in the combo box. Those are enhancements that would add to the utility of this project. Whether I get it in time for the submission date for the project, I'm going to do it nevertheless because this has proven to be a very interesting project for me, and I intend to produce more of these. Thanks.